first before we do that. So we have a quorum. Are there any members of the public that want to be recognized? Just unmute yourself and state your name and your affiliation if you want to. Okay. All right, let's move on to item 2, review and approve the agenda. Anybody want to?
I'll move to approve the agenda as shown.
Okay. I'll second. That's Katie.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Okay. All right, all in favor of approving the agenda as written, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, we have an agenda. Item 3 is not available, so we're on to item 4, and this is where I'm going to give a brief introduction. So the public comment period closed a couple of weeks ago, so we're not taking new public comments on the IMC, IFGC, or Washington State Energy Code Residential. We have thousands of people who support the Energy Code and over 1,000 that are against parts of it at least. So we don't want to rehash that comment. What I think would be most helpful for the council is for the committee today to spend our time ensuring that any language modifications in response to public comment are clear and ready for the council to consider so that the council doesn't have to wordsmith on November 4th. So we don't need to make a recommendation on option 1 or option 2 in the Energy Code today. We don't need to make recommendations on directional things today, but my hope is that we make sure that any code language is ready for the council to consider and that we spend our time on that today. So if a public comment is very clear in the code language that is being proposed to be sent to the council, then we don't necessarily need to consider it today. But if a public comment does not have clear code language, then let's talk about what clear code language could be written or should be written. Ideally, the proponent or someone who made the comment has very clear code language already. But if there's a bit of wordsmithing, let's talk about that today. We don't need to discuss and debate every single public comment. That's not what we need to do today. We can, but we don't need to. There's a PDF of the meeting documents that includes all the technical public comments, those that are not just for or against, but actually have specific code language strike-throughs or additions that improve the code in the commenter's perspective. I'll suggest that we don't need to go line by line through that document for the Energy Code. Instead, I'll let the committee and the public bring up areas where they have specific language that responds to a public comment. The committee can then discuss and vote on whether to forward any code language modifications to the council so that the council it's clear what the options are and it's clear that the code language we're sending is enforceable and clear to builders and others. Of course, committee members can make whatever motions they want. So I'm not limiting that. I'm just saying for best use of our time, I think that would be the best use of our time. So again, this is not about new public comments on the code, the codes that are in front of us. It's about specific code language changes that respond to public comments that were made during that period. So if we have the code language already, we don't need to necessarily discuss it today. But if new code language needs to be presented or brought forward based on the public comment, let's talk about that. Are there any questions about that? And this is for council members and also the public. And please raise your hand if you have a comment and I'll call on you. Okay, great. All right, let's get into the mechanical code. That's the first of the 2 or 3.
Awesome. Thanks, Joel. Yeah, I guess I had a couple comments just wanted to make here at the outset. I think looking at, you can see on the screen there, the mechanical code technical testimony that we received. I think the first comment from Andrea, I think kind of Chell, as you were just alluding to, it's more of a a stringency choice for the council to decide on. So not necessarily one that requires extensive technical edits. I think it would likely just be copying the kitchen range hood airflow rate and capture efficiency rating values from the electric range column to the combustion range column, if that was what the council decided to do. I think we talked a bit about this comment, and then it's similar to the very last comment here from Ian Casey at the council meeting this past Friday. And I think some important topics on the proposal were discussed. So yeah, I think in terms of responding to those two comments, it's probably really more of a council discussion. So then I guess before we move on to a different topic, did anybody else want to add any technical edits that, specifically, again, I think as Chell noted, we're not taking new public comments. But yeah, open it up.
I think the code language in the public comment is clear.
Right. Okay.
So we can move on, I think.
Okay, great. So the next one from Larry Andrews, I think he also submitted a written comment on this one. So I guess I did want to take a minute because this didn't come up on Friday. And just, as everybody may recall, regarding specifically the topic of filtration, there are two options in the CR 102. So I wanted to highlight that and also reemphasize this specific topic. It only applies to projects permitted using the IMC, not the IRC. So just want to recap the options. So option 1 requires MERV 13, MERV 8, or MERV 4 filtration, depending on the occupancy and equipment type. And the option 1 applies to return air, recirculated air, and outdoor air. Whereas option 2 only applies to air handlers providing outdoor air. And then in option 2, it's not requiring a certain filter. It's just requiring that there is space and fan capacity provided so that the infrastructure exists to be capable of housing a MERV 13 filter. And option 2, because it only applies to systems that provide outdoor air, it's really geared towards filtering outdoor air pollutants, specifically wildfire smoke. So just as a high level summary, again, option 1 applies to more system types, and it actually requires increased levels of MERV filtration. So it's not only targeting outdoor air pollutants like wildfire smoke, but it's also targeting the removal of indoor pollutants. So topic on everybody's mind regarding COVID, the ASHRAE filtration and disinfection FAQ on the ASHRAE website explains how the virus is around 0.1 micrometers. However, the virus doesn't travel through the air by itself. It's trapped in respiratory droplets that are predominantly 1 micrometer in size and larger. So ASHRAE recommends currently using a minimum MERV 13 filter, which is at least 85% efficient at capturing those particles in that size range. And that compares to a MERV 8 filter that's only about 20% efficient. So yeah, just more concisely again, option 1 actually requires the filters, and it also filters outdoor air and indoor air. Option 2 targets outdoor air and doesn't actually require any increased level of filtration, just that the systems are designed to be able to accommodate it. So anyway, just wanted to provide a little bit more background there. So I think just the comment specifically, the first part of the comment is just about not adopting either option, I think. So again, I think that's really a decision for the council that improved language can't really address right now. And then the second part of the comment, I think, is suggesting an inclusion for an exception for a specific brand or maybe a model of electronic air cleaner, or perhaps just an exception for electronic air cleaners in general. And just a bit of background, most filters are going to be mechanical filters that use media with porous structures. And then as air is flowing across that media, a portion of the particles attached to it. And how much and kind of what size determines that MERV rating. And then electronic air filters use electricity to electrically charge particles and collect them on oppositely charged plates. So just that's to say there's kind of a lot of different air cleaning and filtration products and technologies available. And the proposals really leverage MERV as the performance metric. So again, the requirement's not excluding technology, it's just setting a performance target. And I think without that, it's kind of difficult to determine if a technology has equivalent performance. MERV has long been used in code and has an established test standard, specifically ASHRAE standard 52.2. The ASHRAE position paper on filtration and air cleaning notes that electronic filters have been shown to range from being relatively ineffective to very effective at removing indoor airborne particles. So I just think the question with kind of exempting an entire class of filtration technology from the requirement is just a bit of a challenge at this point, just with how someone would determine if that device was providing equivalent performance.
So Caroline, I guess just hearing what you're saying, right now we're not excluding air cleaners. They just would have to demonstrate to the building official that they have equivalent to MERV performance.
Correct. Yeah. And I think for some of those devices, if they don't have a MERV rating, then an alternate kind of materials approach could be made. I think it's just a difficult challenge to address it in the code right now.
Yeah, and we don't have clear code language to specifically allow certain kinds of electronic air cleaners that might meet that, but we're not excluding them either.
I think that's, fair summary.
I guess there are other comments from our committee or Dave, Balon, go ahead.
The problem with electric air cleaners is first, they're not always the same and they don't always clean the air very well. But the secondary problem is they always produce ozone. And ozone is an irritant at the scale of PM2.5. So it's kind of counterintuitive. I'm not really quite sure how you could do any. I mean, if you're selling electric air cleaners, sure, that's fine. That it's a system that is allowed, but mandating in code as an alternative air cleaning system, it's actually not an air cleaning system. It's you trade one kind of pollutant that's fairly damaging for another kind of pollutant that's equally damaging. So I guess you could say, but I don't think it's a good plan to add electronic air cleaners as a feature of our code.
Thanks, Dave. Are there any other comments on this particular subject? Okay. Oh, Ian, go ahead. Ian, go ahead. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Just wanted to respond to David Balon's comments about the ozone. I think a lot of these products do come in an ozone-free variety. And I think there's some requirements in California code for ozone-free for that reason. So I was just throwing that out there, that there is a lot of ozone-free product available.
Okay, thanks, Ian. I guess right now, unless somebody proposed specific code language, the only option for us today is to do nothing on it. We would need specific code language describing what additional language we need in the code in order to more specifically include these if we wanted to. So, and I'm not hearing anybody with that. So I'm going to suggest that we move on.
Sure. Yeah, so the next
I didn't keep
one.
my hands up either. So that's why we're moving on.
This is Mike Lubliner. I think that's a wise decision to hold off on this. There's a lot of work being done with ASHRAE 62.2, the residential side of it. And I think in a commercial building where you have maintenance facilities operators, some of the ozone stuff is less problematic, but I think it's wise to wait right now on this one. David's correct. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, so the next comment, I think, came from Randall Cooper, and his written comment was suggesting that we add AHAM in the body of the text for certified products for the kitchen range hood. And I think this is great addition. I think just adding more clarification, because it's not changing the requirement in any way. If you scroll up a touch, Krista, it's already called out that AHAM is an approved directory. It just wasn't also spelled out in some of these bullets in item 2 that just called out HVI. So this is the language there. It's in both the IMC and the IRC. And I think it would be the same edits in both to address this one. If there's any comments there. Okay, hearing none. The next comment is the one that's been posted for some time. Talked about it on Friday from Eric regarding transformer vault exhaust. And I think it's just an edit that provides greater clarity. And FPA 70 kind of says that you need to be as far as possible, which isn't a very specific term. So essentially this edit is just providing more clarity. Okay, so then moving on, I submitted a public comment.
So just before that, Caroline.
Sure.
At the very bottom in blue, it says 10 feet above any walking walkway.
That's the original
text.
Code, yeah, text that has been in there.
Okay. Is there a better term than walking walkway?
Oh, yes, there is.
Like a walking surface, maybe?
We can check. I imagine that got copied over at some point incorrectly from the proposal, but I also do remember there being discussion that specific term can make a difference.
Okay, and that was doing.
Double check it.
Emailed me and suggested that, so that wasn't my wisdom.
Awesome, thank you.
Are there other comments on this? Okay, we can move on to your comment, Kelly.
Yeah, so I guess more broadly, HB 1050 directs us to adopt certain refrigerant safety standards, and we've adopted ASHRAE 34 and ASHRAE 15. There is also a UL standard that is not going to get published until December 15th. Is that correct, Krista?
That is what UL told me, yes.
Okay, so that's all to say we can't get all of the required standards into this code cycle. So we could go ahead and insert ASHRAE 15.2 right now. So this is kind of the companion document to ASHRAE 15. So it's the safety standard for refrigeration systems in residential applications, developed by ASHRAE. It is the stakeholder document to accommodate the use of A2L refrigerants in model building codes. So again, we could go ahead and make these edits and include them in part of this code adoption cycle, or we could instead pair them, the addition of them, with the final standard that we need to meet all of the safety standards listed in HP 1050. So yeah, definitely curious if there's any thoughts, comments, concerns relative to including them now versus later.
So so you're saying 15.2 is out and we can adopt that today, or we could adopt that in this cycle, but the other standard is not out, not published yet?
That's correct. Yeah, there's one more standard that we have to adopt at some point. So I imagine, Krista, would that be an off-cycle rulemaking starting sometime next year once that had been published?
Depending on the council's wishes, it could be off cycle or it could be adopted as part of the 2024 code and pushed out even farther.
And I guess adopting this standard that was not necessarily out for public, right? It wasn't in the CR 102.
Yeah, and it wasn't in there because it just, this one I think got published either sometime this summer. Yeah, so it wasn't
August sometime, I think.
Okay, yeah, so it just wasn't available for the tag process.
No. So I guess, Krista, from your perspective, how does that square with, you know, putting things out for public comment?
I would probably lean towards doing both this and UL 60335-240, either as an off-cycle rule or next time. I'd probably lean towards off-cycle just so we can get it into the code, and then ecology can finish writing their rules. But yeah, I think it would probably be beneficial to have some comment, although since we are required by statute to adopt this, I'm not sure.
Are we required by statute to adopt this, or is it more of an if statement?
Al, it's trying to remember what it says. Upon adoption of the following standards by the Building Code Council, ecology shall develop rules that. So yeah, I can pull up the language if you want to take a look at it.
Yeah, I guess I want to make sure that, you know, if they require us to adopt it, then let's adopt it. But I want to make sure we don't run afoul of any rulemaking processes. So I guess if we're going to adopt it, maybe we should put it out for public comment, and that means it's an off-cycle rule. That could be a better direction. I guess, Caroline, do you have a response, or should we just open it up to everybody else to make a?
Yeah, I think if there's any comments right now, would love to hear them. If there's not, I kind of agree. I think since we have to do an off-cycle rule for the other standard as well, this could be part of it. So.
But only if before January 1, 2023, the state council adopts the following safety standards into the state building code council. So that's an if statement.
And if they do that afterwards, then let's see, where's the section that's directly. So the building code shall adopt rules that allow the use of substitutes as defined.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so this just says that refrigeration systems and adoptions shall be reviewed with manufacturers, distributors, installers, and contractors.
In the
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I think it would just be cleaner to pair it with an off-cycle rule at this point. At the same time, I know we have a lot of those stakeholders who show up and participate in a lot of this process. So again, if there's any comments, we'd love to hear them now. If there's no comments, I think we can move on, and I can probably work with Krista to better understand the pros and cons of putting it in the CR 103 versus putting this specific standard in the off-cycle rule that we have to do anyway.
Okay, are there any comments? Does anybody want to unmute or raise their hand? Okay, silent crowd today. Does that get us through the?
Yeah, I think that gets us through the mechanical ones. I think including the edit for Randall Cooper's and for Eric Vandermeer's should be included in what we discuss as a council next Friday. And then I think everything else are decisions for the council regarding the range hood, as well as on the filtration topic, option 1 versus option 2. Okay,
sounds good. All right, well, that will close out the mechanical. And are we going to the IFGC? Is that next? Or is that?
We didn't get any comments on.
Yeah, there was only one change in the fuel gas code. And
okay, I'll open it up. Does anybody have any additional responses to public comments on the FGC? Okay, let's move on to the residential energy code. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't plan on going through every single one of these in order because there's a lot of them. So I guess I will let committee members bring up items and then also let the public bring up items if you have, code change suggestions on this. So we'll just go in order of people who raise their hands and want to bring up these particular issues. All right, Damon, go ahead.
Thanks, Joe. Hey, I was having computer difficulties here, trying to get my hand up. Several pages up, there was something about a medium dwelling unit comment. Yeah, this is something I brought up at the council meeting. I don't know why this idea has not been considered in the past. We have such a huge range between 1,500 square feet and 5,000 square feet that perhaps adding in a medium size to our, large and between large and small, that this seems to make sense to save a credit off as far as energy consumption of those buildings compared to the 4,500 square foot building. So I would speak in favor of this.
Thanks, Damon. And I think we have clear code language here, or I see it as clear code language, which is what I think our charge is today. So yeah, I think we have clear code language that the council can consider on next Friday. Does anybody have additional thoughts on what Damon presented and what's on the screen right now? Go ahead, Dave. Balin.
This is an odd proposal in that we don't really have, or we haven't used an approach that would allow us to really separate the dwelling units outside of the whole range. The second thing is it appears that what we're doing is we're reducing the impact of item 2, which is the great bulk of the single family residents that are built. The average is somewhere around 2,500 to 2,200, 2,400 square feet. The third is that this was originally a compromise, or not so much a compromise, an arrangement that the BIAW insisted on when the size characteristics were put in about 2010. And I'm not totally clear that we have actually done what we need to do to get the deal rescinded. I agree that there's a good size difference between a 4,500 square foot house and a 2,500 square foot house. But the question of whether we get extra performance out of doing it this way, I think is unlikely.
Okay, thanks, Dave. I guess we have code language in front of us that's a clear option or alternate based on public comment to what's in the CR 102. So does anybody have further comments on the code languages in front of us? Go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, I guess because there is such a difference between the 1,500 and the 1,500 and the 5,000 square foot range on the amount of energy you're going to be using, theoretically, or not theoretically, rather logically, a smaller home at the 2,000 square foot level will use substantially less energy, as Damon had talked about previously, than those at like the 4,500. So I don't know that we're necessarily reducing the amount of energy consumption being utilized for those smaller units. I definitely think that it's going to help offset some of the concerns that our members have. And if this was a compromise back in 2010, it's 2022, so that needs to be revisited and maybe updated. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. Go ahead, Jay.
I'm wondering, in the sense of trying to be clear here, is this really two questions? One is adding the square foot definitions to the sizes, and then any changes in credits, which may be more, I'm not sure if this is more of a policy decision or a technical decision.
Yeah, I think those are two different things. One is adding another size category, and the other one is you're correct, is stringency. Yeah, and I think that's more of a directional thing for the council, but certainly we can comment on it today if other people have comments.
Well, then I'd add on a policy standpoint, one of the things I'd want to consider is anything that has a impact of incenting larger dwelling units is a challenge to some of the affordable housing things that we're trying to do. I don't know if that's a consideration for the Building Code Council. It certainly is for me as a policy maker, where the trend has been towards fewer people in larger homes, which has been a challenge to get more people closer to the places they want to be. Thanks.
That's true. Are there other comments on this? Public comment on this bit of code language? Okay, and I do think this is clear enough that the council can consider it. All right, are there other subjects that anybody would like to cover today within the energy code residential? Go ahead, Damon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if this is in our public comment list. There was a proposal submitted to the tag. It was number 97 for the ERI. And if it is in the public comment and it's okay to go ahead and introduce that.
Yeah, I think, I believe it was in the, yeah, Steve Tepio. Yeah, go ahead. So that there was a proposal, so the proposal has code language in it or something, and we would need to flesh that out today to send to the council. Go ahead, Damon.
Thank you. So the ERI, which was introduced in the IECC, I believe in 2018, is a performance path. There was an AIA article I brought to the council back in 2018, I believe, showing that 95 builders in California use the performance path as opposed to the prescriptive to achieve compliance with Title 24. Most importantly is the new IRA, or the Inflation Reduction Act, provides now significant rebates for projects that meet Energy Star or in projects that meet net zero already. The 45L tax credit has been around since 2006, but it tends to lapse and then get filed retroactively. In this case, they've now set it up for 10 years of there for tax credits. So this is a huge opportunity for homeowners and builders. Going performance allows much more flexibility than the limited number of choices that we currently have in Table 406. And finally, the raters that are performing these modeling and doing these inspections are highly trained, rigorously tested. They have a QA rate, or quality assurance rate, of 10%. They have to carry E&O insurance because they are liable if they have an error or omission. The big concern is that there's been a disparity between electric and gas heat. The revised proposal that WSU put forward addressed that. They changed the score. The score was 55 for heat pumps, but you had to get down to 47 for natural gas. So I think that concern has been alleviated. This is something we've been asking for since 2009. It's just a really good way to give flexibility and ensure high performance buildings. So I'm highly in support.
Thanks, Damon. And the revised proposal, does Krista have what Damon, Krista, do you know what Damon is talking about? Do you have that?
There's proposal 97 from WSU.
Proposal 97 didn't have a lot of detail in it. Yeah, there's, this is what you were talking about, Damon, in there?
Correct. Yeah, and following the tag, and I think Jonathan Jones is on this meeting, indicated that he submitted a revised proposal to make that differentiation between gas and electric.
Krista, do you have that, or are you aware of that? Do you know, Jonathan, are you in the house?
I am. I'm in a listening capacity. When that proposal was thrown in, it was actually thrown in with my personal name. I've been working on it since 2015. I've switched employment to WSU, and so I actually am looking for guidance because it changes the perception of me personally being involved with this. Does that make sense? But I did provide a reproposal based on the table that we had during the tag. I resubmitted it, and then when I came back to propose on it, that was when a lot of the documentation hadn't been available on the website due to some technical difficulties or whatever. So all of the documentation that I provided was not available at the time of the tag for a full 2 weeks purview. So I didn't, during the tag, go over the documentation that was provided on the revised sheet because again, it wasn't available for public comment for 24 hours.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. Dave Balon, you have your hand up? Go ahead.
When this was presented to the tag, well, first let me say, I'm in some agreement with the argument that a performance code our performance standard would be helpful in our code. Our current performance standard is pretty unusable. That does contrast with several other places, including California, where that's far more straightforward. The second part of this is that I think the ERI compliance is a substantial change in our code, which is essentially a prescriptive code and has been for more or less 20 years. And that isn't by itself an argument against an ERI. In fact, quite the contrary. The big problem here is that what an ERI means and what the rating should be needs to correspond roughly, at least, to what we actually are expecting to get out of our prescriptive standard. And it needs to provide at least a plausible avenue for distinguishing between gas and electric in the code compliance. I don't know if what Jonathan has proposed is even close to that. It looks somewhat low, but the fact is that this is true of just about every item of the ERI itself. We do not have a good crosswalk between what we've done in the option tables, the normalization tables, and for that matter, their prescriptive code, and what we would get out of an ERI. It is certainly doable. It just hasn't been done. I have spoken with people at NIA relatively recently about this problem, and it is my view that we need to spend some time with NIA's contracting people, or however we do this, and get the kind of support we need to get that kind of comparison done. It's not trivial, but it is, and it isn't me. It isn't me. It's somebody else. But the fact is that this needs to be done more systematically, so that when we actually end up with an ERI, that it'll not only actually work, but it will deliver what we think we should be delivering at this point in our code development process.
Thanks, Dave. And I think to summarize, one of the things you brought up is that we don't have information on whether this is equivalent to the rest of the code or not. Is that kind of the primary bit of research you're bringing up?
Right.
No. Okay. Andrea.
Yeah, I was just going to say that BIW, we support getting a performance pathway in the code, such as the ERI. I will say that this method of compliance with the energy code is definitely preferred by our builders. Typically, it allows them more flexibility to meet the standards that are required. And then also, I will say that probably a lot of building officials would be behind this, because providing the ERI rating will reduce the amount of review time that they have. And as Damon pointed out, it's going to be necessary for some of the IRA funding. So I would rather see the SBCC adopt an ERA an ERI-based compliance method rather than asking the legislature to do so, forcing the SBCC to do that. So I would recommend passing this proposal on through if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. And a question for you, or I guess anybody else is, so there's $2,500 for in the IRA for meeting certain standards and having the HERS rate a home. Does it?
No, this is Mike Lubein. There's $2,500 to $5,000.
$5,000.
Yeah.
Yep. It's $5,000 for the like zero ready or whatever.
Yeah, this if you meet Energy Star, the new version, it's $2,500. If you know, with the rater and the rating to the ERI requirements, it's $5,000. If you go to a higher level, which is the DOE net zero energy ready specifications.
Mm-hmm. And I guess for anybody out there, what does it cost to get a HERS rater on a project approximately? Is it like if you weren't gonna have a HERS rater and you hired one so you could get the DOE funds, is that all of your $2,500 or is that a small fraction of it?
Say as a HERS.
May I? Oh, go ahead, David.
Okay, I was gonna say I depending on the project and the location, it was somewhere between $300 and $600. That includes 2 field inspections, the modeling, and all the reporting and whatever is on there. So it's significantly less than the rebate.
Okay, so the rebate is still worth it.
Sure. It also depends on what you're charging for particular programs, such as I know folks who charge more for Built Green in Washington State than you see as typical fees. But that builder is getting other incentives. Does that make sense? Like the expedited building permit, increased lot densities, those sort of things, because they align with Seattle's REACH program. So the rating does depend on all of the services, the cost, right? But a typical service in my neck of the woods is similar to Damon's. It's about $600, and that would include not only the modeling portion, but the field visit verifications. And this includes at the end that you would have a third-party duct tester and a third-party blow-door tester on the job site. And then just a little, and I didn't mean to jump into the middle of this, but Caroline, if you don't mind real fast, I do want to explain further that proposal. In that proposal, it says that the ERI should be adjusted based on the final adoption scores of everything that you guys have in your stuff, with 2 different options being proposed on paths. It was very difficult to align modeling. And so it does say in there in the proposal that a database should be used and that the ERI should be re-indexed based on the final code selection pieces.
Okay. I guess is that, in my mind, is that similar to what we've done with the commercial code before, where we set the modeling path to be equivalent to the prescriptive path through modeling that is done later. I guess the CR 103 must have specific language, right?
I mean, I think the difference, or at least in the commercial code, that modeling was done, I think, during the public comment period. So those values were available for adoption into the CR3.
Chill, I also think this, Mike Lubein, it also meets the intent of what we have in the residential code for passive house, where you have to approve and certify that the modeling has been done, and then you need to have a verification that but it's not, the passive house, I don't believe is, there's a requirement that the accessibility and database and quality assurance, but it is the same. I think the commercial code, the passive house compliance we have in the residential, this would be consistent with that philosophy. I just wanted to also point out, I agree with David that, it'd be nice to do some additional analysis, but I do think you're on a good point here in terms of what Jonathan proposed. I do think, I agree, it's unusable. I was training for years on the energy code, and we never really did have a viable simulation analysis. And in the law, state law, it says that we have to have a simulation of, not necessarily viable, but a simulation analysis as one of the options to the builder. So this brings us more in line with, I think, the intent of the state law. Thank you.
Yeah, and we technically, we have the R405 path, but this is an additional kind of performance path just to clarify for everybody else. Caroline, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think just some of Jonathan's comments addressed part of my question, but just some confusion. This is all referencing section R406, and we talk a lot about section R406. So just in terms of code language that's adoptable, I think some of these references, right, all need to be updated.
In the proposal, and sorry to chime in ahead, everybody has their hand raised again. In the proposal, it did state, oh, I'm so sorry. I just completely squirreled because something flashed in my face. Kid emergency. Give me a second to recollect my thoughts. My ADHD.
No, I know where you're going, Jonathan. In the original proposal, it says section numbers need to be updated.
Thank you. Yeah, so the national codes have this, the equivalent of R406.3 is labeled as R408 in the national codes. And the original section for ERI indexing is the 406 section. So I literally had to recreate that entire section in the proposal. So I literally took all of the I codes 406, put them into a document so we have it, and then said, hey, we need to make sure that the reference point of 406 or 40.8 needs to match in the end, however we want to do that.
But to your point, Caroline, we don't have adoptable code language right now in front of us because the section numbers would need to be updated. And so go ahead. Do you have more thoughts, Caroline?
No, I think that was all. I was just curious if there was a more recent version where all of that work had been done to, I guess, correlate with the rest of the code and everything that was in the CR 102, but sounds like maybe it hasn't been started yet.
Oh, okay. I have a question. Andrea, have your hand up? Dave, you have your hand up again. I have a question, which is, when I see this proposal, I see that the additional efficiency packages are still required. So the reference is 401.2.5, but I'm assuming that that would mean that Washington State's R406. So I guess, is that intentional that the R406 packages are all required in this ERI compliance?
So when the original modeling was done, the complaint is that the ERI needed to take into consideration our carbon piece of the code, right? Which is the differentiating between us and national, so to speak. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're a little bit more stringent, but that's pretty easy. It was the carbon piece that took consideration. So I had provided all those models to a bunch of folks, David Bailon and a few of those guys. We took Ecotope's modeling that they used to propose the code as far as the sizes. We dumped them into a bunch of rim rates. We picked different credit selections based on your field type and produced a range of scores. And then boiled that down. We also sent this off to Phil Farley in Florida, which is another kind of modeling expert, to get his opinion on it, because I didn't want to just be me saying this kind of stuff. And he's a pretty sharp guy. He recommended ASHRAE's version of 47. And then the original proposal wasn't liked because there was no separation between the two, but because of the baseline, supposedly on how the model's being calculated, we moved to address that by going back through and shifting certain baselines to penalize, or not penalize, to address the carbon chart. Penalize is the wrong term. And then we did our best with that. And that was between us and the other folks, because you're right, the three paths are different in a way in which they start off their baselines. So we just needed to make sure they align. That was the kind of kicker, kind of like the HSPF to the HSPF2 conundrum we're currently having, right? It's just trying to align those so they match up in the end. And so to this modeling, we've reached out to a few other experts. And again, this will have to be readjusted based on what we pass on to legislation.
Okay, and I guess if you go up to table R406.2 in this proposal, one of the, you scroll up, it requires, I mean, when I see this right here where it says additional efficiency packages, my understanding, my guess is that this section will be updated to require compliance with R406 within this pathway. Is that correct? Is that the intention of this?
Well, the issue of this one is, again, remember the national codes, it's going to refer you to the 408. So however you align where you want to categorize that number. So in the national codes, this is referencing the additional packages in the 2021 IECC. Those additional packages are 5 options. You must choose one from 5 different item selections, and that is supposed to be added into the ERI index. And that's what they're saying when they established their ERI index, is that some of those pathways that you have to pick from in the national code in 2021 have been included in the calculation for ERI by that requirement right there.
Okay, but I guess my specific question is, if let's say we adopted this and we renumbered everything, would the additional efficiency packages essentially point you to Washington State's R406 table and require compliance with that as part of the ERI?
Yes, that is the intention, to line it to Washington State's use.
So it would require you to use the fuel normalization table and then select all of the other credits to get you to the numbers of credits.
So remember when I said we tried to establish this baseline, I had to use that carbon chart. I had to separate out in gas and electric. I had to pick my credit selections on what I saw most commonly used throughout the state to establish the ERIs. So I already attempted to do this in the original establishment of the ERI index. And again, I'm in a weird position now with my new job. So I'm just trying to clarify my proposal. I'm not really speaking on its behalf at this point in time anymore because of my new job. It's kind of a weird situation for me at the moment.
Totally understand, and I appreciate your wisdom on this and putting the proposal together. All right. Okay, Andrea.
Yeah, I forgot to mention earlier that I know of, 7 or 8 local jurisdictions in our state that actually use the ERI as a established pathway to adhering to the R405 section. So I think that there's definitely an appetite for this, not just from the builders, but from building officials, because it makes their life a lot easier. So just wanted to put that back in there.
Okay.
This is Mike Bluebliner. I'd like to echo that. When I was doing training, I think there was a state building code council opinion that came from Spokane where and Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought they were already doing modeling, but there's no necessarily constraints or quality assurances to the level that you're proposing. And so, as I think I said in one of the meetings, the genie's kind of out of the bottle in the valley there, and it would be nice to give the opportunity to do it more consistently and leverage the energy tax credits that are now available and allow other jurisdictions to comply with the code directly and not leaving it up to an individual building official to review a compliance calculation with simulations. Thank you.
I want to point out one small more thing, and Damon and David, I apologize for cutting you off. Remember, a lot of people are really looking at this, not just for viable pathway through codes. A lot of builders are looking to take advantage of this federal incentives for sure, right? And if you look at our new proposed code, no matter which path you take, we are above the 2021 code by an X percentage. I'm going to guess roughly 10% off the top of my head, just by looking at the stuff that's kind of being proposed. This actually ends up being perfectly in alignment with Energy Star's requirements. Energy Star has moved to a national baseline requirement of the national code with a 10% improvement above that, with a bunch of electrification policies included in it. In other words, ERV charges, gas can only be used as backup. I can keep going down the list, but you get the idea. It's a voluntary electrification program. So those who are going to go after this money are not most likely going to be choosing the gas path unless they are adding on a backup system.
Thanks, Jonathan. That's great to hear. I'd love to get all the federal money for every home. That would increase affordability and lots of things. Dave Balan.
Yeah, I guess my concern here is that this, as it's proposed right now, it's not really quite ready for prime time. There are several cross references that are missing. We need to have a section that it needs to go to its own section, or it needs to go, or something else needs to go to its own, to a different section. The additional efficiency packages is there's a really big difference between what an additional efficiency package in IECC is, at least was in the 2008 or 2021 code, but it's really way different. It's like 5 options and that's all. We have dozens of options depending on the combinations. It's quite a bit more difficult to imagine how that would be done here. You really do need to have a target, an ERI target, that takes into account something resembling the at least an obvious path, if not not many obvious paths through our code in order to decide what the numbers ought to be. Right now, I would say that just on the basis of my review, this package represents a rollback of on the order of 10% to 15% over our 2018 code, let alone whatever we actually end up with in this code, because of the ambiguities with the option tables. I think the other thing I want to say is this is not a code change per se. It is an alternative compliance path. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't go through the exercise of making this alternative compliance path consistent with our current code, and do that now, starting now. And it may not actually be ready when we actually do a CR 103, but it certainly can be made ready sometime in the next year. At this point, I don't see that this proposal as it sits is ready for either the CR 103 or any other prime time.
Okay, thanks, Dave. And you're bringing up the same point that I still don't fully feel like I have a 100% clear answer of, which is, it says additional efficiency packages. I'm assuming that refers to Washington State's 2021 R406 additional efficiency options instead of 2021 IECC, because those are not part of this proposal. Right. So I guess it's still, I guess I'm not 100% certain that we have an answer to that. And that was brought up by Dave. So go ahead, Damon.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess there's some frustration because again, this was talked about in 2009. Chuck Murray indicated we were going to try to get it in the 2012, then the 2015, and then the 2018. It came out nationally. And here we're proposing to possibly kick the can down the road again, as these incentive programs are out there, and certainly somebody can do the HERS rating and comply, but that's kind of a double dip. And my experience is that people that choose to do modeling and look at the 118 variables you can enter into the software as opposed to our 27 items in the table, they get really creative and they start really trying to be even more energy efficient. So this is ready for prime time, in my opinion.
This is Mike Lubliner. I'm sorry I can't raise my hand on my phone here. I believe that we spent probably 40 hours personally in the NIA meetings on ERI. And my understanding, to get to Chel's question and David's point, is that what Jonathan did was to take the prototypes that are used in our code, look at the typical energy credits and carbon credits, and try to develop with the software that is typically used for tax credits under the HERS rating program, equivalent ERIs. And he did that, and that was documented and it was presented and discussed for hours in the State Building Code Council. I totally agree that, David, that we should continue to evaluate it. I think NIA would be a good one. I had made some recommendations on protocol and supported the position that NIA go ahead and do that, but it didn't happen. But I do think that it's time. I think that the numbers that Jonathan came up with can be documented. And I think that it addressed the issue of fuel inconsistencies. I know, Chel, was something you and I talked about. And I would recommend that we move forward with it. I think it's going to be helpful in providing more guidance, more consistency, more quality assurance, and affordable housing. And parallel to that, do an analysis to see if the assertion that this is 10% worse than the energy code in 2018. That wasn't what I gleaned from the analysis at all. In fact, we put a safety factor in the numbers. And so, again, I think that one could do both. One could adopt this with some reasonably quick evaluations and that it's equitable, and then go back and do a further research evaluation based on how we could improve upon it further. But when we had these discussions with NIA, nobody would thought that there would be 10 years of IRA legislation that was going to provide $2,500 to $5,000. And we very well knew that our code was very close to those levels. So this is going to align that objective with our state energy code. And our code could be one of the first in the country to builders that are building to this level actually also meet the energy code and get a tax credit. And it will encourage, as Damon or somebody said, more innovation when it doesn't. And builders will, if it's pretty darn close, the energy prescriptive path's pretty darn close to it, but they haven't gotten to their 45L 5,000 level, they're going to do it because they're going to get $5,000, which they won't get if they don't do it. So I think it could have a positive impact. Thank you for engaging me.
So, thanks, Mike. Gavin.
Yeah, I want to chime in support of Dave Bailon's points. I was on the tag, and what we're looking at here is not clear code language. Shell's questioning is spot on in my judgment regarding whether we are going to be observing the Washington State additional energy efficiency credits or not. The tag gave this a thorough review. The original proposal, when it looks like we have another one now, the original proposal was incomplete. There weren't strikeouts and underlines. There wasn't an appendix for us to understand. What we are doing with an ERI. And I would contend, someone brought up passive house. Guys, passive houses are, we blow the water out from underneath the boat here. And to try to come in with a performance path that is right equal when raters are going to have financial interests in getting permits and getting houses closed, getting certificates of occupancy is missing the point as well. It is really easy to get creative with these energy models. Everyone's throwing out the word creative. It's really easy to push the energy model and get the results that you want. Errors and emissions insurance, that doesn't mean anything. We need to regulate raters if we are going to allow this at the state level. And I think that, a group could come together out of this conversation, Andrea, to figure out how to do this and how to do this effectively and right. But given that this wasn't in the CR2, my recommendation to this committee would be to, move on and form a group to figure this out in the coming year or so here. Thanks.
Thanks, Gavin. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay, so Jill, I'm trying to help clarify for you. I don't have a pin or anything that I can monkey around with the screen on, but what it's saying is it's referencing the additional energy efficiency packages. And so what this means particularly, let's say we look at the national numbers. It means that national number for the 2021 unamended code has an ERI index based off the additional selections on 408. What our code means is it references our 406.3 chart. In other words, you're still going to have the equal amount of savings to the 406.3 chart we currently have, as well as the 406.2 chart. Remember, I had to recreate an entire chapter of language. I didn't catch every little tiny thing in it. The entire chapter does not exist in Washington State Code, so there is no place to do strikeouts or anything like that in there. I literally had to recreate the entire chapter.
Yep. Yeah, so the additional efficiency packages section that's on the screen right now, that would point to the 2021 IECC additional efficiency packages.
No, because we adjusted our ERI index to match our efficiency additional packages. So I told you I had to create a gas home, I had to create an electric home. lots of different sizes, lots of different credit selections. We boiled this down to an ERI index. And so that's how we established the ERI, was using R406.2 carbon selection and R406.3 credit selection process.
Okay, but the code language in front of us requires something called additional efficiency packages. And you're saying it doesn't need to because that's already baked into the ERI numbers.
Correct. It's just saying that when you're establishing the ERI for whatever you're doing for code, it has to include those additional energy efficiency items. This is the first time National Code came out with that language for the 408. And so again, our code is different because we have different numbers and stuff because we eliminated this chapter. And as you can see in my proposal, I said, we're going to have to do some work to integrate this chapter back into our code. Right. So that was
Jonathan, just to ask a question on that specific point again, I think the question Chel's trying to ask, like, you submit your permit application, you're not checking off, I did this C406 measure and this C406 measure. This is saying you had to have included those in the ERI that you're comparing to. But that's the whole point, right? You're not doing those measures, I think.
Correct. So in this case, if I had 50% of my ducts inside in a second story floor joist system and the rest of my ducts are outside in the attic, this model would give me credit for 50% DSE within conditioned space. Washington State Code does not allow that. Right? And so I still have to meet the overall energy requirement of all your credit selections. I just may not follow the same path as you.
Okay, makes sense. Go ahead, Dwayne.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I sat through all those hours of TAG meetings and NIA discussions a year ago, 2 years ago, and I never got to the point where I felt comfortable that the numbers we picked for ERI were equivalent. And part of that's just because a lot of this is over my head as far as the modeling goes, but I never got to any kind of comfort level that this was right. And unless there's some way to really show that with a robust range of building types and sizes, I just want to hold off and not do this unless and until we do get into that comfort zone. Thank you.
One path ahead of us is we can engage in off-cycle rulemaking based on legislation, and we have this federal legislation that could give us a path to engage in off-cycle rulemaking to adopt an ERI standard. That's just one option, but that will be before the council, I guess. That there was available, at least for the council, is engaging in off-cycle rulemaking, and we could start that in January. And I know, council staff has lots on their plate already, but the council could decide that as a future action. So, I mean, just looking in front of me, this is not adoptable code language. We cannot put this in our CR 103 in a little over a week. And we're not going to do that today. I mean, we're not going to sit here and update all the things today. Someone could update these so that they could be adoptable on November 4th. But that wouldn't seem to address other concerns about, well, I guess there was some modeling analysis that showed that this is equally stringent. And then others have questioned whether that is adequate modeling, but I'm not going to say one way or the other on that. But the paths are, I guess, someone could update all the references and see if the council wants to pass it in a little over a week. We could suggest that off-cycle rulemaking start next year, where we get this path, and based on my understanding of timelines, it could be really close to being finalized or finalized by July 1, 2023. There'd be public comment and that kind of thing. So those seem like paths, but certainly we can't adopt what we see in front of us now. That's just not.
Well, this is Mike Lubliner. Again, I apologize for not raising my hand. I think you've hit on a good procedure that would probably address folks' concerns here. The only concern that I heard, I was the one that brought up the passive house analogy in the context of modeling. In that same, I also brought up that this commercial code allows for simulation analysis. So if we're going to make claims about the dials in a residential model, we need to understand that the commercial code does that, and there are a hell of a lot more dials. So I would like to, rather than focusing on the person gaming the system with models, I would like to focus on getting the David Balon's question addressed, which is, does it provide equivalency? And I think your proposal and I also think it will give us a much better time frame to really look at all the issues and continue to get people's issues identified so that we can address them in the final modeling report. But I think it's a win-win if we can do this and commit to doing it. And I certainly think that the builders in the state and the arguments that have been made here about supporting this for affordable housing and consistency so that others can do what Spokane has done and in a non-rogue way that addresses the gaming concerns. I think it's a win-win. I'd really encourage you to do this. And I'm speaking now as an individual, not representing Washington State University or my current employer. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Dwayne, do you have another comment?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, you can lower your hand then. Caroline.
Yeah, sorry, another annoying kind of technical item, but not really knowing what section it would be. It wasn't filed in the CR 102. And I guess I'm just curious then, maybe Krista, you could comment, is there a path at this point, or what does that look like for, I think as Jonathan noted, that the section wasn't existing?
I'm trying to find my code. It would need to go in as a whole new section, which has some challenges with trying to do that in the 103, but it would be as section R408.
Okay.
There's the whole question of substantive changes and adopting something that wasn't put out for public comment that goes along with, introducing a whole new chapter section in the CR 103.
Okay, thank you.
I think it'd be hard to say that a whole new chapter is not a substantive change. Jonathan.
I muted myself. I apologize. I would like to point out there's other factors in this proposal. And again, I'm not for or against. I just want to make sure everybody fully understands what's in front of them because of my new position. There was also a recommendation in this, or actually there wasn't a recommendation. There was language in this proposal requiring a central database to be used for Washington State, which would produce a centralized document. So all the AHJs would be reviewing one form for Washington State code compliance, not one from Ecotrope, one from Energy Gauge, one from whoever. So we were also talking about centralizing the information in such a way that should an AHJ have a problem, they can ask somebody to go in, review the information. Also, this information would be used in such a way that we're hoping that we could use it to gather data at the same time and use this to help guide our future code proposals as we get more information from the construction industry. So there's a lot of things in here besides just that. I would highly recommend reading the whole proposal if you haven't already. And with that, I thank you guys for at least taking a view of this.
Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, well, we've had lots of comments on this. as chair, am not, speaking for or against anything. I think the paths for the council are, we can't adopt this language with I don't think the council can adopt the language without, numbered sections and the complete proposal. So, and there's be a substantive change. So, I guess, are there other comments on this today? Okay, I am in general support of trying to figure out how to get this into the code. I think it's unfortunate that we're to this point and now having a robust discussion on it, as it was voted down by the tag 9 to 8 to 2, so it was a very close vote on that. And so it's unfortunate we're this far and now asking certain questions. So I guess I think having some people work on this as a off-cycle rule based on the Inflation Reduction Act and the money available would be a good choice. And that would be up to the council and then anybody who wants to work on that and revise it. I think the council can't engage in a rule until someone has a potential rule brought forward that's got all the pieces of it. So Andrea and Damon and anybody else who wants to support this, yeah, I'd suggest find some people and get the code sections updated and get it to be a high quality chapter. And I think, Mike and Dave Balon and others think, some backup modeling to make sure it's equivalent, or verify that it's equivalent. I'd suggest that, and the sooner you get that done, the sooner it can be in front of the council for an off-cycle rule. And then that'll go through public comment and that kind of thing. Go ahead, Damon.
What's the mechanism for forming a work group such as that?
As long as you don't have a quorum of any of the committees or the council, it is whoever wants to participate. If the council could also form a work group more officially, I think both of those are fine options. I think a lot of the proposals were generated, a lot of the original proposals were generated by members of the public as well as, council members or tag members. And then a lot of the vetting of those, happened by independent groups as well. So it's kind of your choice as to, or whoever wants to push this, it's their choice as to who they convene, as long as they don't convene quorums of tags or, quorums of tags, committees, or council members. It's your choice. Or you could bring up something at the council and say, I'd like to convene a work group to do this. And then council members will volunteer for that. Members of the public could be on that as well. And then once it's, 95% there, then the council could entertain it as a off-cycle rule, and then we go out for public comment, we get public comments on it, and then that work group, whether it's official or not, could look at those comments, and it would probably come through the MVE committee at some point. That's how I would imagine it would work.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm happy to talk to you offline about strategizing on that if you want to. Okay, go ahead, Jonathan.
Hey, out of respect, I know everybody here has a huge schedule. I'm kind of being a one-man show, and I need to move on to catch up some work. Can I propose the next topic we discuss is the HSPF2?
If a committee member wants to make a motion to consider something out of order, we could consider the opinion. We could table this until after item 5. if that's in fact. Yeah, we could table this until after item 5 if a committee member wanted to make that motion.
I guess is there anyone else in the public who similarly has a time constraint on item 4? Just curious there. If not seeing any hands go up, I will make a motion to table item 4 until after we deal with item 5.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Motion to table usually cuts off discussion. So all in favor of the motion to table the Washington State Energy Code residential item 4 until after we consider item 5, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay. Request for opinion, heat pump efficiency rating. Krista, you want to bring that up? And then if we have anybody from the jurisdiction or anybody else who wants to walk us through the question and why it's needed, that could be you, Jonathan, or the individual who submitted this.
Yeah, I don't think I see my counterpart on here who actually submitted it on our behalf. So at WSU, we received a lot of questions lately from distributors about the HSPF conversion that's going on from HSPF 1 to HSPF 2. While most of the other states usually don't have too much of a problem with this because you just have to meet the federal minimum. And they already had a crosswalk for the extra point in 2021, but they didn't have a crosswalk for Washington State's HSPF's conversions or COPs for commercial and all that kinds of stuff. So we went with the Daikin recommended crosswalk, which several industry stakeholders went with. I think DOE, ResNet. I was told it was adopted somewhere else. Everybody's doing something very, very similar to this crosswalk chart. We want to get it into the 2018 code because that code's going to sunset here pretty soon, and we're going to have an answer for that code. And we would like to put it in the 2021 code with a sunset date that as soon as the databases are up and running, we will cancel out this crosswalk chart, and you'll just go to AHRI or whatever and grab your certificate.
Thank you. And I have also talked to other people in the industry that support this as a temporary measure until there's an official crosswalk. Sorry.
Yeah, I think Oregon just adopted it too, if I remember correctly, like verbatim as well.
Okay, so there are committee comments on the opinion or the answer. Go ahead, Caroline.
Yeah, just a question. I think, Jonathan, you just noted that DOE and others are using this crosswalk. Is it just that they haven't published it yet? Is that the reason we wouldn't rely on what they've issued?
Yeah, I don't think it's a formal code anywhere. So they kind of did this interim adoption piece. ResNet's doing it for modeling purposes, right? Because we have to put in the correct modeling. We have to convert it back to HSPF until the softwares catch up. So DOE and ResNet adopted a similar path so they could continue to convert HSPF to HSPF2 for the modeling purposes.
Okay, but I guess what you're saying, DOE hasn't officially published something, then they're using it in a modeling baseline, but not in any other manner.
DOE did, I think it's in the doc. I don't know if you got everything. Again, we had to use an AHJ to propose this. I was working with some folks to try to get this put together. I did send off a folder of documents that came along with this. I don't know if you guys received them. I had a lot from DOE. It had ResNet's deal on it. It had Daikin's deal on it. It had Johnstone's thermostats is actually linked inside this document. So you can see Johnstone's CO2 conversion information. There are so many outside sources that I included with this proposal to reference.
I think that didn't all come through to Krista when the jurisdiction submitted it.
Okay.
separately forwarded the Dykron brochure that you had sent me. And that tracked with what you had suggested. So that's where this is coming from, but all the other backup documentation I may not have come through. Dwayne. Dwayne, you're on mute. Greg, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Dwayne. I was having trouble unmuting myself. We were considering this for the Seattle code, and it just seemed wrong to have something that is an approximation but not really right, and really not approved by DOE or anybody. And so what we put into 403.3.2 was one sentence, or what we're proposing to, and that is, after new equipment efficiency values, including HSPF2, EER2, and SEER2 have been published by the US Department of Energy, the equipment is permitted to meet those values in lieu of the table values. So by doing that, we don't have some interim, not quite right thing that's being bandied about. And as soon as DOE comes out with their official chart, which is what, December, then everybody can just start using it, and we don't have to have something that's wrong out there.
When did you say, Dwayne, the official guidance is coming out?
I think I heard December. Does that sound right to the others?
Does anybody know?
It's a little too late.
Sure, when the date of the chart will come out. The new testing protocols required from all manufacturers starting January 1. The whole reason this is coming about is because of what they call the M1 test protocol. And essentially, it's approximately a 15% reduction in the way efficiency numbers are reported. And because all of our builders are required to meet certain HSPF targets, depending which code path they select, this is going to be important. And it's just, people need to be able to translate the old number to the new number during this transition period next year.
Thanks, Greg. You were cutting out there a little bit at the end. Dwayne, you said, so my understanding is the equipment is currently coming out with SEER2s on them and not with an original SEER. And so that's why this is
that's why I said, let's just put a sentence in there that says, as soon as those values are published, then people can use those values exactly as they're published, instead of taking on some values that are approximations that are going to be not quite right.
So you're not giving anyone approximations in the short term. You're waiting for the long-term long-term modeling to come out.
Right. So and nobody needs to comply with this until DOE publishes, right? And DOE is going to publish, and then you can comply with the correct thing. And just by putting that one phrase in the code, then you're already there.
So when it says these, the answers, right, currently says these approximations may be used until the Department of Energy or AHRI publish more definitive guidance. Is that not cutting the mustard for you?
Well, yeah, this is just in lieu of taking on that approximation that has been published in that brochure, which just seems like it's going to make things more confusing for everybody by having a separate standard out there.
Okay. Thanks, Dwayne. Jonathan.
Yeah, so one of the issues that we did have was particularly that as of the January 1st, while AHRI may be up and running and reporting the new efficiencies, those are just manufacturers reported efficiencies and not tested efficiencies. So they are also not as accurate as we want them to be until they get their testing procedures done. And I believe the sunset date on testing is roughly 2024. DOE does have guidance that's sitting out for single phase units only in 2023. So that's not going to help you if you're doing other stuff. And that just says in 2023, and this was right off AHRI's most recent class. So we're just looking for something that everybody can use easily, just across the board without confusing folks until more of that stuff is available for people to find on the site.
Jonathan, Elliot.
Elliot Brown, Johnstone Supply. This is a huge topic now. So the thing that we're having is we are already receiving HSPF2 equipment, CO2 HSPF2 equipment. And going forward, that's just going to happen more and more frequently. And what we're trying to tell our contractors is, you know, we need to wait for crosswalk or some other system to guide them on, in the code, everything is HSPF, period. And they're like, well, it's just HSPF. We need something to help guide them, to show them this 9.5 HSPF2 is equivalent to X HSPF1. So that's where most distributors are at today. So that's what I got.
So you're saying you need it now because it's we would need it as soon as possible. Yeah. Dwayne, you have your hand up still.
Sorry.
No worries. Okay. Anybody else have comments on this draft opinion? So this is something that we can act on today. We could approve it today. We could also do whatever else we want with it. Larry. Larry, go ahead. You're on mute right now.
Okay. Well, as a contractor, you know, I like Dwayne's idea, but in the realistic world, that's not going to work because we're already running out of the old equipment and they're getting the new equipment in. And so our new equipment is as efficient as the old equipment, but the rating's lower.
Hey, that's your mama.
So what are we going to do? I mean, you see what I mean? And it's going to be here for, I mean, we're putting stuff in left and right now. I mean, I got 20 no heats and 5 furnaces that were condemned. And so we need the equipment's flying off the shelf so fast. We're almost out of it already.
And Larry, so you're saying the equipment that you're talking about has a CO2 rating, but it doesn't have a SEER rating.
Right.
Yep.
It's coming. I mean, they already told me, because we were going to put in a coil the other day and the guy says, don't do it because you won't get the condenser won't have an ARA match. So I can't get a rating off it. See? So the guy wanted a heat pump, you know, a gas furnace with a heat pump, but I can't put the coil they had is right now is a SEER coil. But what they got, the condensers coming down the line are the SEER 2 stuff. And so, and that's, and I'll have it in 15 days. Mm-hmm. So that we're already, and well, what do we do? You know, what do we do? We need this chart and we need you to accept it to get us by. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Larry. Elliot.
So I know that some people are saying that the testing is actually a lower standard. It's not. It's actually a more stringent standard. You're going from a 0.1 static to I think a 0.25 static on all your testing procedures. So it's actually, even though the value is lower, it's actually being tested at a more real world standard these days with the new CO2 HSPF2 product. I just want to make sure everybody realizes that.
Thanks, Elliot. I guess I'm thinking, as I'm hearing this testimony, that we do need something now that code officials will have and installers will have. And I also see that if you provide this now, it doesn't have an end date for construction or an end date for anything else. And if the DOE numbers come out and I can't imagine them being that different, but if they're somewhat different, then how would a code official know when this applied versus when the DOE numbers applied? Because we just have this until the Department of Energy or AHRI publish more definitive guidance. What if it was designed during the 2 months when this is the official thing versus, or whether it was ordered when this was the official thing or afterwards when the DOE numbers come out? That seems like that's the problem with the answer right now, based on the testimony that I'm hearing.
But this sounds like a great idea for a temporary emergency rule for the council to put in place that would be defined to last only until the official numbers come out, right? Because this is a code, we're talking about a code right now that goes into effect next summer, not now. So it's not
the
going to
2018
be
code. People are trying to comply with the 2018 code right now.
Right. But just having something that accept these and say, yeah, we can do those for the time being, and then when the official numbers come out, this would go away. Can you word it that way?
That's what I was trying to figure out. If you have word choices, that would be great to hear. Larry, do you have word choices?
Well, my word choice would be to use the chart until the DOT comes out with their chart. And those that have already permitted under this present chart would be able to maintain. But new permits, as soon as the DOT brings out their stuff, then we would fall under the DOT. It depends on the day you pull the permit, okay? Because that's the guiding part of it all, is when you pull the permit, you're buying the equipment right about then. And so everything is jiving to that. But if the DOT, if the permit date is after the DOT, then we fall under the DOT. I think it's that simple.
Thanks, Larry. Caroline.
Well, I guess perhaps to the question of the mechanism, it could just have a time frame in it. Mm-hmm. So it would give more flexibility, right? I think to Dwayne's comment about it being an emergency rule, my sense is that requires a lot more time and effort for staff than an opinion. But the benefit of the emergency rule is it expires in 120 days. But that could be an option potentially to work in an end date for this instead of a until, that maybe gives more flexibility, or maybe that's worse. I don't know, just an idea.
Yeah, and I think permit date is probably the thing that people would look at. So if it said these approximations may be used until the Department of Energy or AHRI publish more definitive guidance, or January 15th, 2023, whichever is earlier, or I guess whichever is later, or something like that. Or these approximations may be used for permits applied for before the Department of Energy or AHI publish more definitive guidance.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that is.
Or what was that?
Or just until the council revises this opinion based on official guidance. I don't know, because then I could see questions of, well, did that get published on this date, or when was it made official?
Yep. Well, I was, that's why I was putting in the second one, or until, you know, January 15th, 2023, or something like that. Because if Dwayne thinks the guidance is coming out in December, you know, guidance sometimes doesn't come out when you think it is, but a month later, it probably will have come out, and that. So January, and I was saying 15th just because I hate it when someone has a January 1 deadline, because then somebody who's trying to do something before January 1 works on December 26th and 24th. And that person, yeah. And then it would have to say whether whichever's earlier. I don't know. That's my spitball on what might work. Thoughts, opinions, raise your hand. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Curious, would the State Building Code Council be able to expand that date should the necessary circumstances arise?
Like there's no guidance?
Correct.
Let's see, our first meeting in 2023 is usually one or the second week or so of the month. But we don't have, I don't know, Krista, do you have dates for the council meetings in January?
I don't think we've said anything yet. Annette, do you know?
I don't have them. No.
This year, our first meeting was the 21st. It was the third Friday. And I think we've stuck to third Fridays for a lot of the, well, sometimes fourth Fridays. I guess we could make it January 31 or something just to cover that. I don't know, that gives us some clarity. Okay, Jonathan.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that's really great. Thank you. I was going to mention the same thing. It's just I'm worried that maybe we have to go out of session or something and ask for something later. And like you said, it could be kind of painful. So I do like the idea that maybe the State Building Code Council could expand it if for whatever reason, heaven forbids, stuff just isn't up and running yet.
Okay. All right. What comments do people have on what you see in front of you, the modified opinion? Elliot.
And excuse me if I'm misunderstanding what's going on. So this would be a temporary rule, but in the 2021 code, we're still referencing HSPF 1, SEER 1, where those going to be automatically updated to SEER 2 HSPF 2s down the road? Or
just to be clear, this is not a rule. This is an opinion issued by the Building Code Council.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then 2021 we haven't dealt with yet, but we're hoping that the guidance comes out so we can adopt it or provide another opinion when that comes out. But since the 2021 code won't be in effect until the middle of next year, I don't think we need an opinion on that right now. So this only affects the 2018 code.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, other thoughts on it? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to do something with this.
I will make a motion that we move this forward to the council for consideration next Friday.
The council doesn't have to approve interpretations. The committees have that ability to finalize requests for opinions. So if you would like to send it to the council, we can do that, or the committee can approve it.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Krista. I guess before I rescind or stick with my motion, Chell, do you have a preference? I think given some of the topics that were just raised, do you think more input at the council meeting would be helpful? Or I know this, I think, was just posted recently as well, to let it ruminate with folks for another couple of days.
My opinion is that this is probably a good opinion to issue today, unless we think we need more public input. But I think we have, it was on the agenda in draft form, and I think we had public opinion on it today, so
okay,
no reason why we wouldn't handle it today.
Thanks. I will edit my motion to then approve the opinion as shown on the screen.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Okay, all right, thank you to those who put this together and sat with us today as we tried to figure out the right path forward. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I just want to say thank you to all you folks. I do need to jump off onto another meeting, so I do super appreciate you moving this up in the order to help me out for this. Thank you very much, everybody, and you all have a wonderful Thursday.
Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, we are back to the Washington State Energy Code residential. And Larry, you're not on mute, so we hear you. Okay, so we're back to the Washington State Energy Code residential, and we had talked about a few items. There are more items we could talk about. We don't, I'll just reiterate, the goal today is to get code language ready for the council to consider. So if we have adequate code language in the public comment, the council can consider it. If we need to work on code language or we have new code language going forward, today's a great day to do that, so the council doesn't have to wordsmith. Just tough to do that with that many people. Go ahead, Caroline.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the language. I think it was regarding the secondary and supplemental heating clarification. Yeah, so these are just some edits in response to, Chell, the comment you had made about cleaning up the secondary supplemental references. So the thought here is just that updating the header in the table, because now some of these credits are not just dependent on the primary space heating. So that edit there, updating the table references, those got updated in the 2021 code. And then I think if there is a larger change in here, it's exchanging the word supplemental for secondary. So for system type 2, which is the heating system using a heat pump with supplemental heat. And the thinking there is that that is the same terminology that is used in the earlier part of the code that defines how supplemental heating can be used. So just trying to create some consistency there. And then also clarifying that that system type is available whether your supplemental heating is natural gas or electric resistance. And then similarly in footnote B, again, just driving consistency with the supplemental heating section. So changing that from 38 to 40. And then this, I think, edits for both option 1 and option 2. So.
Thanks, Caroline. That will make the code better, probably better for everybody, all the users. Are there comments or thoughts on the suggested revised language? Okay, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, up until now, I wasn't as concerned about this, but I didn't realize that it got changed to 40 degrees. It is a feature of this table that the performance is dependent on that number because especially in zone 1, a substantial fraction of the degree days that are being used are in around 40 degrees. It's even worse in zone 2 because most of the degree days are substantially below 40 degrees. So you end up with a system that doesn't perform anywhere near as well as the simulations that got these numbers to begin with. I'm not sure what would happen, and I did most of those runs. I don't remember what the 40 degree was exactly, but it's surprising how big a difference it makes, especially in zone 1. So I would really encourage you to take it back to 38. I don't understand why you wouldn't do that, frankly. The heat pumps are typically running near, the only reason to do 40 is because you don't want the heat pump to go into defrost. We have a real heat pump. It has a real defrost cycle. So there's no actual reason why it couldn't be 30 for that matter. But if we have to change it at all, we should change it that way.
Yeah, I think totally agree with most of those thoughts. I think that, again, the main reason was just to create alignment with 403.1.2. So if that's not a priority, or for some reason, there's a good reason why this number should be different than that number, it seems like having consistency throughout with terminology and values could be helpful. So anyway.
My guess is that at some point, somebody's going to make a proposal to make this, to take this down, but it's not going to be this cycle. Right now, we're in a position to live with this, I think. But
yeah, and I guess question, is it more tied then to how that system type was modeled in that table? Is that something we should go verify?
It is more tied to that, actually, and there is well, I don't know, I don't think it was presented at the tag, but it was presented to the working group that was involved in that table. So if you want to review it, it's actually informative because it does suggest that 38 is maybe a little high from the performance point of view. That is to say, it could easily be argued for something more like 30, easily. But that's not where we ended up.
Yeah, and right now we're only responding to public comments and that kind of thing. So, well, I think so. 403.1.2 talks about 40 degrees, and that was in CR1. Is that in CR 102? I think that's.
Yeah, this has to do with first stage cutout. That's actually probably irrelevant for this because you can't do first stage gas heating. Basically you have to basically take the heat pump offline once you're basically using gas heat, because you're just going to slug the compressor if you don't. So you have to pick a number. The 40 degrees is for electric resistance supplemental heat, which is actually a way to keep the first stage control away from the high temperature, the higher temperatures, and get the benefit of the heat pump there. But this has been here for a while, and that's what that was about.
So are you saying, Dave, that 40 degrees is not the right number to use in the
It's not for this. No, it's not. If you actually tried to do first stage heating with a gas furnace, then you're basically trying to use the compressor. You're trading off against the compressor. The coil will be hot. You won't get it. You won't get it to actually evaporate. And at the end of the day, you'll end up with liquid in the compressor, and you'll kill the compressor in a relatively short order. And that's why you don't do that. That's why this is designed as a hard changeover, not as a supplemental fuel, a supplemental heating system.
I guess, Dave, okay, so there's 38 versus 40, and then there's also changing the word secondary to supplemental. Do you have thoughts on that? Is there a significantly important distinction between secondary and supplemental that should be changed in what we see in front of us?
No, because the supplemental refers to electrical resistance, and this is not that. This is actually, it's not supplemental. It's a changeover from one heating system to another.
Okay, so supplemental, you're saying, has to do with electric resistance, and secondary has to do with combustion?
Well, and yeah, all right. I mean, I don't know that we've actually made that distinction exactly, but that's the point here. Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Larry.
The thing I look at is the high heat COPs and then the low heat COPs. The high heat COPs are based off 47 degrees dry bulb. And then the low COPs are based off 17 degrees dry bulb. So, I mean, if you want to get the best of it, it's a very long drawn out calculation, because you have to know what your rate is for the gas furnace. You have to know what the electrical rate is. And then you're going to have to interpolate between these two COPs to get to where, if you're looking for payback, okay? And I think at the 38 degrees, because of the compressor doing what it does, it might do a little bit of defrost, okay? Depending on how much humidity you have outside at the time. Because you got to remember that you're taking heat from that and then bringing it in. And so you'd want to keep it out of if you want to get the most you can, because you don't want to be switching back and forth all the time, back and forth, because that's kind of bad too. You want to run as long as you can, as deep as you can. And then if you're going to go into the defrost mode, you need to look to see if the payback's really there. Okay, because is it helping you or is it hurting you? And it's not just a simple number. It's if you're really doing honest, it's a long drawn out calculation. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Go ahead, Caroline.
Yeah, I appreciate all the comments on this proposed thing. I think I can just go confirm with the modeling for this if these are appropriate changes. So I think I will take that as a next step, because I'm not sure we can answer the question right now.
I believe I can send you the modeling that was done. It's a summary, but it does show, I don't remember how many, about 7 or 8 possible changeovers for each climate. And you can look at it.
Sounds good.
The only problem is that it's done without a lot of column headings. So I might have to do a little bit to make it so that you could actually figure out what was going on.
Okay. Thanks.
Oh, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have to leave at this moment, so I just wanted to say adios. So I'm sorry I couldn't stay for the entire meeting.
Okay, thanks, Peter. We still have a quorum by my count. So that's good. Okay, so Caroline, I guess, do you think this is, so the idea, the hope today was that—
Yeah, I'm not ready to move this forward. I have an action item to go figure out, I think, exactly what the modeling was, because I think I have a little bit of a different understanding than David. So I just want to double check that.
Okay. I sent a tiny bit of language that to Krista that I'd like to look at, which is based on option 1 versus option 2. And option 2 had a credit that didn't have any credits associated with it. In other words, you didn't get it. It was not 0, and you didn't get credits. So I looked at what number should go in there based on other things, and the numbers appear to be, it's for the connected thermostat option, and it appears it should be 0.5 and 0.5 based on what I looked at. And then it also appears that we need to modify footnote C to refer to system type or options 3.1 and 3.3 instead of 3.1 and 3.2 for option 2. So that's a lot of words, but so that is connected thermostat appears to be 0.5 and 0.5, and then in footnote C, which only applies to this one, it would be system type 3, or not system type, but yeah, option 3.9 can only be taken with option 3.1 and 3.3. So those are the language edits. Johnny.
Yeah, kind of chatting about the option table 2 and Dave Balon's comment about it. I think it's not too difficult to just kind of look at option table 1 and the different pathways, and then looking at option table 2 and seeing that option table 2 is about 1.5 points less. So if there is a way to make them equal based on his comment, I think that is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. So I would encourage y'all to consider that as something, so that both options are an apples to apples comparison and not an apples to oranges comparison. Yeah. So strong agreement with that.
Okay, thanks, Johnny. So I suggested some language edits, and let's get to Johnny's comment in a second. I suggested some edits. Are there any comments on the minor language bits that I had suggested?
I think that was the intent of the tag when we dealt with this, that it would be half a point.
Okay.
So it's a reasonable adjustment.
Yep. And it only applies to the less efficient systems. Well, yeah. Okay, so I guess my hope was to vote on these things so that we could send them to the council as a slightly revised pieces. This is the only one that's met the threshold yet that we can actually vote on it and send it to the council. So maybe it's not that important to do so. Maybe we'll wait until the end of the day and then vote on anything that we've updated that is ready. So, okay, let's go to Johnny's comment. So Dave Malone made a public comment that when the tables were done, and he submitted some backup on it, that the option 2 R406 was 1.5 points short of being equivalent to I guess, Dave, do you want to introduce it?
It's 1.5 points short of being equivalent to the tag action that didn't have, well, that was done before the heat pump revisions that were made in 403. So all I did was go through and say, it's kind of more complicated than just that, because we moved some of the items out of the option table into the prescriptive code as part of the mashup document, and those stayed there. So I went through and estimated how many points we actually moved, which I charitably said, well, let's say it's a 1.5. It really is probably less than that, but may not be as little as 1. And then adjusted appropriately to the normalization table in each of the, well, in the heat pump category, to see where we would end up. And that's where the 1.5 points additional came from.
Thanks, Dave. Are there comments on this? I think, I mean, just from the technical perspective of today, we have clear code language that Dave sent, so the council could readily consider that proposal next Friday without, with having clear code language, and it's more of a directional question, I think, than it is for the MVE, but we can still talk about it today if anybody wants to.
Dave, could you please just summarize what the overall impact of your change is?
It's essentially, well, the idea is that for option 2, it returns the total points to get the same level of performance that we had back in the original proposal that was passed by the tag. Because of the way option 2, what happened with option 2 was it had to deal with the heat pump changes that got made subsequently by the tag, and that it ends up reducing it ends up moving the zero line in the normalization table to the heat pump to the heat pump gas furnace combination, and then all of that gets reduced by about 1.5 points. But all that gets reduced when you do the whole option table. So this actually brings the option table part of the proposal to the same level of performance. As a side point, as I pointed out in my testimony, if you don't do this, you end up with essentially the same performance level as we have in the 2018 code.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dwayne and Dave. Katie.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Maybe this is asking, I think your previous comment may have answered my question, but so this doesn't end up incentivizing one option over another, it just corrects the calculation.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Are there other comments on this? Go ahead, Damon.
If I recall correctly, this that option 2 table came out after the tag concluded. Is that correct? Did they go through the MVE?
No, this is not a tag. This was that was the problem. The CAG passed all those things, and then we ran out of time. So it was never actually realigned to meet all the different things that we did. So the option table got passed, a week or two before the heat pump edit got passed, and we ran out of time.
Okay. Was this table considered by the MVE before the full council?
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead.
Oh, Damon, yeah, that's my recollection that this option 2 was not considered by the tag, but it was considered by the MVE, and it was work that was done to incorporate all of the measures that had been added into the prescriptive path. So
You might add that I thought that the option 2 that was developed by MVE was, apart from the overall credits, was a reasonable assessment of what the tag did and what the goals of that heat pump proposal was. So, I thought it was quite reasonable, except for the actual end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the tag passed what is called option 1 as the R406 table. And then the tag also adopted heat pump requirements for space heating and water heating. And the tag did not correlate those two. So in other words, you could be required to have a heat pump, but the R406 table allowed a system type that was not a heat pump. And so some work was done between the tag and the MVE to update and create a second option that included the heat pump, space heating, water heating requirements in the base code that the tag passed, and then revise the options table so that the number of credits you get for an option was commensurate with the energy savings you get originally. And one of the challenges is that envelope options save a lot of energy if you use inefficient heating like gas and electric resistance. They're really important if you use those heat sources. If you use a heat pump that's 200 to 300% efficient, then your envelope improvements don't actually save quite as much energy as they would with those less efficient heat sources. So it required some remodeling in the table, and some of the credits didn't actually met the threshold of energy savings in option 1, didn't actually meet the threshold of meeting a half a credit under option 2 because you're starting with a more efficient heat source. And that's a reason why there was there's big changes between what we call now option 1 and option 2. Andrea.
I just wanted to clarify. So this is like a recommendation from Dave Balon. This hasn't been adopted yet, right? For option 2?
Correct. This is
okay.
There's a lot of public comments, and this is one public comment, and we happen to be talking about it right now. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure I was understanding correctly. Thank you.
Yep. And just to be totally clear, in my opinion, this is clear code language. So the MVE committee doesn't really need to do anything on this today because the council can consider this, and it doesn't really affect. I mean, we don't need clearer code language. That's not what we need for this public comment.
Gotcha. Okay. I would like to just add really quick that the credits here, I understand what's being said and the logic behind it, but the credits here and the conversations that we've had as an industry has been, this is significantly larger. And so it's not anybody's fault, obviously, it's just running out of time. But in the conversations that we've had, I don't think that there would be support for this.
Thanks, Andrea. Go ahead, Larry.
The reason why, Dave, the reason why you're adding the credits is because you're mandating in the option 2 the heat pump. So you're giving, you have to add the credits in there because you're using the heat pump, which would have gave you more credits to begin with anyway. I'm trying to get your rationality here, Dave. And so you're bumping it up what the heat pump credits would have been, because now you have to put the heat pumps in there. Is that what you're telling me, Dave?
That's roughly right. Yes. The idea was, what I was doing was I was trying to align the credits in option 2 with what was the effect of the normalization and option tables that was passed by the tag, which was 8 points, say, for the medium dwelling.
Okay, so since you have to you know, you had your basic option 2, and now, but though we're going to have to add these heat pumps in there, and so those heat pumps were worth these amount of credits. So that's where we're at. Is that
That's
correct,
right.
Dave?
And this wasn't a simulation exercise. This was a points exercise.
It's a point exercise.
Yeah.
So you know, it really hasn't changed anything other than that the heat pumps were mandated into this option.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Dave.
Okay, are there further comments on this? Clear code language. Go ahead, Damon.
You know, I'd have to dig in further, but thinking that it's only a 1.5 point difference, that the things that we put in the code, it's not just heat pumps, it was also heat pump water heaters, which are significantly more efficient than standard water heaters. It seems to me that we've moved this a little bit too far and that the original numbers are probably closer. Thank you.
Thanks, Damon.
Yes. Can I clarify that?
Go ahead, Johnny.
You still get those points though, like even if the heat pump water heater is now required in the base code, you actually can still get those heat pump water heating points in option 2, which is worth, I think, 1 or 2 points. So it's not like we're taking away the heat pump water heating points and then keeping the same number of total points required. You still can gain those option 2, those points in the R406 in option 2. So all Dave Balon's thing is doing is normalizing, making this equivalent to option 1. I don't want to speak for you, Dave. That's my interpretation. You seem to have a different interpretation, but
Sort of, except that option 1 has been changed as well, but it's really to make it equivalent to the tag actions on the option table.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other comments? I guess I don't see any more hands up on this particular subject. Are there other comments on other public comments that would help us get better language for the council? Andrea had sent to me and a couple others some language about, what was it, alternates, alternate pathways for building officials. Andrew, do you remember?
Yeah, we've had lots of conversations, and I don't know that it's worthy of going forward at this point, so I would like to just drop it for this code cycle, and if things come up and we have a better direction to move over or to move forward with, then I'll circle back around with people.
Oh, okay, cool. I just want to make sure we didn't not include that one.
Thank you.
And then Andrew, you also had deleting an exception in one of the credits, 3 point
Yeah, that was the 9 HSP, and maybe Damon, you want to talk on that, because I think it was you that had said that the exception is not actually needed because all ductless mini splits are already at 10.
Yeah, that is what the market is like. I have not seen a ductless under 10. I'm trying to recall where that exception was. Oh, is it the second paragraph there?
Yeah, so it's in 3.6a, the second little paragraph thing.
Yeah, and this one was stricken, but if you scroll up, I bet there's we're down, there's an exception under, it's a high efficiency HVAC option, so being the, oh no, sorry, I was thinking in the code. there's an exception in one of the options. So I thought the comment was just to get rid of this the exception that I tried to circle.
I was trying to go up and read the.
Yeah.
Well, she had said remove, I thought.
And I guess my understanding was that it was just removing the exception because this equipment doesn't exist. Is that correct, Damon?
Yeah. I'm just squinting trying to read this here. Thanks.
Wasn't this the language we had adopted based on the emergency rule for equipment that was not available?
No, that was forced air equipment. This is ductless.
Yeah.
And I think that was also like moving the 11 to the 10 HSPF.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I don't think you're going to find a piece of equipment that's less than 10. So when it comes to ductless.
Yeah, so their public comment was to delete just the exception, not the credit.
Correct.
Go ahead, Dave Balon.
Well, the reason that was put in that way was because there were at least some comments from manufacturers, a manufacturer representative that's on the tag, that it was possible to get below 10 in this and have equipment that's in this category. I don't have personal knowledge of any such equipment, but that's what he said, and that's how it got done.
There's no harm leaving it in. It is kind of it's going to be a very rare case.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Larry.
I'm okay with it either way. I don't really know for sure.
I'm thinking once you break that 1.5 ton mark is when the HSPF starts dropping below 10, because you got your 2 ton, your 2.5, and your 3 ton, and as you break that, the 1.5 are up in the 10s. You can get them, but I think we're still below 10 on your 2 tons and your 1.5 and your 3 tons. And I think that's where it comes from. I'd have to take a look at the Fujitsus and the Mitsubishis, but I think when you get to that bigger size is when that HSPF drops off somewhat. I'm almost sure of it, but I'd have to, I'd have to go look at all that again. But okay, that's what I know. That's what I know. As we break the 1.5 ton mark, then our efficiencies drop somewhat. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Greg.
Hi, everybody. I remember having this discussion in the tag group. When you get into the smaller multi-zone systems, actually the HSPFs fall some. And we've seen some builders getting forced into some perverse HVAC design decisions where they've had to use single zone 1-to-1 systems to hit this magic 10 number. So this gives them the latitude to do small, more sustainable homes and use smart heat pump systems. That's why we put it in there.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Elliot.
Just as an example, I happen to have the HSPF for Daikin in front of me, and their 1.5 ton system, because what you have to remember about ductless is how their HSPF is all done by ducted, non-ducted are mixed, and only the non-ducted is above 10. So just as an example for you guys.
Okay. The safe thing is probably just leave it in, and if nobody uses it, nobody uses it. Go ahead, Damon.
Yeah, if I was the genesis of this idea through Andrea, then I would say go ahead and keep the exception in there. It's, gives latitude.
Yep. I'm all for making the code shorter if we can. But yeah, if somebody's going to use it and then why not leave it in? Okay, thanks. Okay, anything else in the energy code that we want to discuss? Go ahead, Damon.
While we still got 3.6a there, I saw, I think, Chell, you put out what you thought was a definition of primary living areas.
Yeah.
And yep. in discussions I've had in other groups, bedrooms are rarely considered primary living areas. It's your great room, kitchen, dining room, living room, family room. I would guess that bedrooms are accepted from that.
Okay. Can you bring up that language, Kristen? We'll discuss. Yeah, and I don't know what was in the modeling, and what a typical design involves. There we are.
Oh, really?
Okay, so you're saying bedrooms are not considered. Okay. Elliot? Could be a residual hand. Go ahead, Dave Balin.
Yeah, I agree with that. The whole idea of this provision is to make it so that the ductless heat pump has a chance of heating more or less all the living zones, and that's going to be from some sort of central room. Bedrooms are almost always closed off. Not that it's not a bad idea to have such a conditioning in the bedroom, but for this purpose and the savings that we are calculating, the bedrooms are not going to be acceptable, I don't think.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Dwayne.
Yeah, I thought primary referred to the largest zone or the largest space in the dwelling.
Yeah, and we had been asked to kind of provide a little bit more guidance on that. So that's why this public comment was submitted. But it sounds like deleting bedrooms from this, but including it as it's not a definition, it's just in footnote A, which is the only place it really shows up, primary living areas ever shows up in this code. Okay, I don't see anyone thinking that this isn't a good idea, so I guess we can move forward with that. Okay, other areas of the code we should talk about. Okay, I guess the thing I'd like to do is to entertain a motion to move forward the few areas where we have kind of agreement today on code changes, and that would be the connected thermostats language, the primary living areas. Are there others that we kind of that we went through today that we think we have slightly better language than when we started? Caroline?
Yeah, I guess, Joe, I'm just wondering if we need to take action.
We don't.
Okay.
I
could,
go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, I could just see minor further edits happening, and I think there was a request that any proposed changes just be provided in advance of the council meeting.
Okay.
anyway, just kind of a question, comment there.
I guess I was thinking of putting the MVE stamp of approval on some of them so that they don't need to be rehashed, but maybe.
Got it. So just on the ones, well, I guess you're going to outline exactly which ones. Because I mean, we didn't talk about all of the ones in this document because that wasn't really the point.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the couple that we kind of generally agreed on. That were ready, and there's only 2 of them that I remember. So maybe we don't really need to do anything with that. We can just at the council meeting accept those public comments. Okay, Larry.
Shell, could you then outline for us what all the council was going to be considering? Is it going to be everything that's on your whole list here, or just the things you talked about today? Or
well, the council is free to consider whatever they want that was made as a public comment or a response to a public comment when we meet on the 4th. So the MVE committee is not going to limit the options that the council can consider in any way. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. So
this would depend on some council member making a motion to make a change based on one of these comments, right?
Yeah, after some discussion, and we had a work session. At some point, somebody will say, "I move to, adopt the code except for this, this, and this, or with these changes, or something," and then there will be modifications of that motion until we pass it, probably. So I guess I was thinking we would send something so that here are 2 changes that MVE put a stamp on, and any other changes would be freshly considered by the council. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, my comment has to do with the table R405.2, comma 2. I mean, no, you were up there. Can you go back? Yeah. Keep going right there, the emissions table. If the propane number's right at 10.5, how did the natural gas go to 11.7? Because when you shoot the combustion test, okay, and you got equal combustion, the propane has at least 1% more CO2 in the exhaust than the natural gas does. So the physics of this don't align how it's right. It's not physically possible to do what you have here. So I mean, when you shoot a combustion test, propane, due to the heating value content, has more CO2 coming out at the same percentage. You take one furnace and you fire it at natural gas, and you take the same furnace and you fire it with propane, you're going to have 1% more. So what is 1%? 1% is 10,000 ppm. 10,000 ppm more. So, I mean, there's something wrong here, okay? And if anything, I think the natural gas should be around 10 instead of your 11.7, okay? And that's just pure physics, okay? And you can't change physics, okay? When you're shooting a combustion test, which we do every day over here at Andrews Mechanical, those are actual facts. And how this number gets to where it is shouldn't be that way. If anything, the natural gas should be at least down to around 10, okay? Maybe 9.5. But if your propane number's right at 10.5, then the natural gas can't be there, okay?
Hey, Larry, they're in different units.
No, yeah, well, so let's talk about that. They're in different units. So a therm is 100,000 BTUs, And a gallon of propane is about 95,000 BTUs, okay? But when you look at the amount of ppm coming out, which my meters tell me, the ppm coming out of the propane unit is always more, considerably more, 1% more than the natural gas unit. And the reason why is the heating value of the gas. The heating value of the gas on natural gas, the base unit is 1,000 BTUs per cubic foot, where propane is 2,000 and some. Okay, the heating value is a lot more. And it has a lot more other stuff in it than just methane. Okay, and that's why. If you analyze the two gases, by far the natural gas is a much cleaner gas burning than what the propane is, but that's not what you're showing here.
Thanks, Larry. Dave Balon. Dave Balon, you're on mute.
These numbers came from the EPA and are the ones that are used by Department of Ecology for evaluating emissions under various circumstances. Propane is a particularly interesting problem because it's not really consistently one kind of gas or another kind of gas. It's actually a blend. And presumably somebody at EPA or someplace like that went through and got sort of an average across the entire country. I don't think it's really worth changing. It is also true that this is a gallon of propane, so it's 10.5 pounds per gallon. And if it were all methane, that would be a roughly equivalent to the 11 that's used in the natural gas thermal. Once again, in amount of CO2e in a therm of gas is an EPA-based system, or not system, an EPA-based calculation that is, published as essentially the federal standard. It could be different, but I mean, you actually get butane and other gases in natural gas, and that would change things some, maybe a lot, but that's not what this is about.
Thanks, Dave. And I guess just to be clear, I'm going to go to you, Gary, in a second, but we have clear public comment code language in the testimony that you see on the screen. Strike out in new value, strike out in new value. So we're going to rehash this at the Code Council meeting probably in a week. So I guess the comments we would take today are on, is the code language clear? Can we send this, or can the council adequately consider this and potentially adopt it into a CR 103 without code language issues? So there'll be both for and against, I'm sure, discussions at the council meeting on Friday. Okay, go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, not too much to add. I was going to reiterate, Jill, what you said, that we are talking about therms versus gallons, so that's the difference there. And these numbers, 11.7 and 10.5, are pretty well accepted numbers. They're not numbers that we made up. So that was my comment there. Thanks.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, Larry, your hand is up, and Dave Balon, your hand's up.
Yeah, can I? Yeah, I will send you the manufacturer's instructions. They tell us that when you scope it in with the analyzer, that when you're firing with propane, you're a percentage higher of CO2, 1%, 1 to 1.5% higher than you are with natural gas. They're all the same. I can send you all the documentation. In order to get the same firing rate out of each one, you're going to be putting out more CO2 with propane than you are natural gas. And I'm more than happy to send those into you guys. Those are manufacturers, the specs. And so if it's 1% more, it's 10,000 ppm. That's a lot. Thank you.
In just, I think a fine point is that there's a difference between CO2 and CO2e. CO2e is a calculated factor based on the global warming potential of a variety of gases that include methane and carbon dioxide and many other things. Go ahead, Dave.
What Gary said is correct. These are the accepted values. That's why.
Dave, I can't really hear you.
What Gary said is right. These are the accepted values that are published at the national level and have technical support documentation and so on. I'm not sure how we would change them, at least not without some fairly serious provisions in that document.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Dwayne.
Yeah, just one point for Larry is that I believe these values take into consideration the upstream emissions, not just CO2, but methane leakage and so forth, and so that actually increases the CO2 equivalent emissions associated with natural gas, and it's not just the amount of emissions that occurs at your burner in the building that they're looking at here.
Thanks, Dwayne. Gary.
Yeah, Dwayne, these are actually, these numbers actually do not consider upstream emissions. These are numbers that result from combustion at the site, as I understand it. These do not include upstream emissions.
That's my understanding too. So, all right. Are there other public comments that we need to work on better language for, so the council can robustly consider them? Okay. I was suggesting that we move those two forward as a recommended. Okay, go ahead, Katie.
Well, I was going to get back to your question about whether or not we should approve the ones that we've kind of already seem to have some consensus around. And I was going to just ask the council members whether or not that would help, or whether they think that would help, you know, like reduce the amount of conversation we'd have to have about ones that we have consensus around. I don't know. I just wanted to put that out there as, you know, trying to help the council move things forward in a timely way.
It's such a small number, it probably wouldn't help whether we move it or not. So yeah. Okay, are there other things? Let's move on to the next agenda item. I feel like I don't see any more hands up for the, is there other business? And I didn't hear anyone suggest any, but is there other business? The good of the order. Okay, well, it is my pleasure to adjourn, and I'll see many of you in a week and a day at the council meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Good job, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Good job, everybody. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.